Hello, welcome to this review of Coronation Outfits from a pattern cutting perspective. I'm going to have a look at some of my favorite coronation outfits and some which might have been improved with a bit of pattern cutting. Before we get stuck in, if you get inspired by all these beautiful dresses you see and actually want to start to learn to draft your own, then do have a look at the link in the description, because I have a special deal on to join my membership this week only. If you join on an annual basis, you get access to all the drafting tutorials. There's now over 140. You get access to the community and you get involved on the voting. And this week only, you get all my block courses for free. So that's a made to measure bodice, skirt and trouser course. And the bodice block is a basic bodice block, but the trouser block is very popular because it can be adapted to different body types. So lots of people love it. So if you have been hunting for perfect trousers, it's worth trying it out. So have a look in the description and let's get back to some pretty dresses. So I love to know, have you already looked at the coronation? Did you watch it live? You couldn't really escape it over here in the UK because it was on all the television. And hello, Beth. Lovely to have you on here. And hello, Ursula. And hello, everybody else. Do feel free to join in the live chat and ask any questions. I'm going to, in a second, switch over to my sketchbook and my iPad, and we can go through all the outfits I thought were really special. I've also got a few I thought didn't quite work. So these are all people. So I always hate, it can become a personal. So I'm just going to sort of review a bit how maybe the pattern cutting didn't quite work, or it wasn't fitted enough, or maybe it wasn't quite the right choice for that. But I'm trying to sort of not be too mean, because there's no need for it. What is quite interesting, of course, I'm going to look at the coronation dresses. So these are the dresses they all wore in Westminster Abbey in the church for the actual coronation. So what you did notice is that a lot of the outfits were specifically chosen for the upper body, because of course if you sit down in the cathedral and all the cameras, because it was all filmed, you only see the upper body. So we can really see how a lot of the choices were made with that in mind. So there's lots of really interesting necklines, which of course is great for us as pattern cutters and makers, because you can either add them to your own block, or if you have a sewing pattern, you can learn a drafting technique and then add it on. Let's start with an actual royal, and this is where I think this is one of the royal princesses. And what I love about this dress, because we had a lot of really interesting necklines and bodices, but what I love about this dress, but it's very simple. So it's got a normal crew neck bodice. It's got very simple darts, so it's just got you 2 darts here and probably maybe darts here, because that will help the shaping. And then the body's got a seam here, and then it's got the paneled skirt, which might be just one piece. But what is really clever with this one is that they've done what is a gathered sleeve hat, which probably has a bit of extra volume. And there's several tutorials you can use for it. You can use the leg of mutton sleeve or gathered sleeve. But what they're basically doing is adding lots of volume to the sleeve hat, which gets you a really nice round shape. But then rather than just being straight, they basically added the volume all the way in the sleeve. So the whole sleeve is really wide. And then what it has got probably underneath, a fitted sleeve or lining, and then the top sleeve sort of, it gets gathered into that, so you get a really nice sort of bell-shaped sleeve. And Shalom has just said it's Princess Beatrice. Yes, I always get confused because between Eugenie and Beatrice, but you're right, it's Beatrice. Well, let's hope so. But you can see that's a really simple style. You can draft yourself really easily. You can use an existing sewing pattern or your basic bodice block. They haven't really made much changes, but then by adding a statement sleeve, it becomes something else. But what they've done here is she's chosen the fabric, or the designer who made it for her has chosen the fabric really well. So it's got just the right amount of weight. So it's really nice and sculptural, but it's still soft enough, so it drapes really nicely. So it's quite, if you look at all the amount of volume there's a lot of volume, but it doesn't become too over the top, so it looks like a costume, but at the same time it also doesn't collapse, because by contrast, an example of this which I think did not work as well was the wife of the Prime Minister of Canada. So you can see she's gone for a similar sort of sleeve. It's actually very similar. It's just sheer. But I think I understand that they wanted to contrast with different fabrics, all in the same color. But I think it looks a bit, I don't know. It doesn't quite work. I think that it's nice to go to a tonal look, but I think it's a bit distracting with the see-throughness, because then it sort of loses that. And it might have been nice to just have a complete overdress, for example, in that see-through fabric, rather than just the sleeves. And what is a bit weird that they got then the bodice, but looks like a knit fabric, but you can sort of see that it seems to be worn on top of something, and then you got again a matching skirt, but it's again a different sheen, so it gets a bit confused. And it's sort of sometimes less is more. There's always, as a designer, whether you're making clothes for yourself or somebody else, it's always to consider is whether adding another layer of details, whether it's actually going to distract from your main design feature. So the Princess Beatrice, by staying really simple, you can see it draws the eye to the main design details, while on who is called Sophie, thank you, Shalom, on this one, the sleeves are just, it doesn't quite work. It's it just distracts. And I think also when she's sitting down, the sleeves are actually the most beautiful detail. And as Ursula is saying, the sleeves are too long. So when you sit down, all you get is this. So it looks a bit like sportswear. Beth is saying sometimes these dresses look beautiful but in person, but difficult to photograph. And that's so true to Beth. And I can't imagine when she was wearing in the shop, it's really nice. There's a rose pink. It really suits her skin color and hair color. But when you photograph, it just looks a bit too higgledy, you could say. While this one is just really plain. So even like keeping the belt plain. I think quite often, if you do day wear, you probably wear with a leather belt, and then you could wear it with flats, and it'd be like a more casual look. But with an occasion like that, quite often you see people wearing quite nice deep colors or pastel colors, but then a single color, because it photographs well and it doesn't become too distracting. So that was a very good example, and then maybe one which didn't quite work as well. And when we saw lots of prints, and I'm going to show you what's actually my favorite, and you might not have to agree with me. I loved this coat Emma Thompson was wearing, which is an Amelia Wickstead. And what she's done, which is really clever, is but it's a very simple coat. So it's sort of quite a Balenciaga-like coat. And actually Amelia Wickstead does this very well, where she has very simple shapes and then just very nice fabrics. So I'd love to know your opinion on this one. But what I love about is the simplicity again. So with a print like that, which is quite out there for among all the sort of plain colors, But this coat worked really well because it is quite tonal in the print. Because what this actually looks like, but it might have been either over dyed or garment dyed, or it's a red fabric which has been printed in a dark brown or dark red. But it's got a really simple shape. So it's got, I've done the body slightly too wide, but you can see it's got very quite Balenciaga-less like shape, because there's no visible seams. There's probably a little dart here. There's this slightly flared sleeve. And some Shalom is just saying it's quite loud. Yes, it's sort of, it's compared to, if you look at Beatrice, that's similar sort of red, darker red, more berry red. And then this one, by contrast, is, well, she's an actress, isn't she, by Emma Thompson. So it's a bit more of a statement. But what works really well is by, if this print had different colors in it, or if it was too small, it would really distract again. So this is something which looks great. It stands out, but it's sort of fitting. It looks quite regal with the red base and then just a single colored print on top. So it's not too, again, distracting. And the really simple silhouette balances out the fabric print. So I think there are always the pieces which work is where you have one statement, whether it's with Beatrice, it's a sleeve and a really simple shape. With Emma Thompson, it is that coat, and then she's just wearing a red a black dress underneath, so that looks very fine. And I think that's where it works really fine. By contrast, there was another floral dress which was David Cameron's wife, and you can see again, it's actually a really lovely dress. Ursula saying most commentators criticize Emma Thompson's for his print choice, but it's actually quite in line with royal dresses from the 1960s. Yes, that's why I think it works. If it was a really, like a 1980s inspired print, it wouldn't work. But this is a very 1950s, 60s. You could have imagined Queen Elizabeth II wearing it. So it sort of works. That theme is quite a sort of royal theme. And I think it's because it is quite tonal. Again, it works. If it was a really contrast print, it might be too much. But on here, I think it blends in this. It works well with stuff like that. It's pleasing. By contrast, where was she? Samantha Cameron. I actually think it's a really nice dress, and I think it would be a great dress for the garden party, which they normally do in the Buckingham Palace Gardens. But when we're walking in to the Abbey, it just looked a little bit too summery. So it's a really lovely floaty dress, but it sort of seemed not quite right for the occasion, I thought. So you can see actually the drafting details are actually really nice. So it's got a neckline with like a little gathered band, which gives you a really cute collar. And then it's got a really nice, slightly off the shoulder yoke, which is gathered. Again, so it's basically using the same print, but creating all these details. And then it's got a really plain bodice for bit, but then again, it's got another sort of row of gathered frills there, and then two more rows of gathered frill. It's got a row of gathered frills in the sleeve, and then it's got actually a slightly gathered cuff. So you can see, again, this is probably a dress, but if you try it on in the shop, it probably look really nice. But I think on the camera, it just stood out straight away because it's just, maybe it's a bit too informal, and she's color coordinated really well with the detail, but it just so stood out a bit compared to all the other outfits. And I also think with the small prints and all the lovely frills, it probably gets lost a little bit as well in the Abby. What do you think? Is that a yes or no from you? This was one of those dresses where I thought, oh, it's a pretty dress. I don't think it quite works for the occasion, because that's, of course, the people who did. Actually, we can go through all the prime ministers. I got picked a few prime ministers and their and prime ministers' wives as well. And Shalom D is just saying it's not befitting the occasion. It follows her up. Yeah, it's sort of a bit like, it's quite a boho, you know. It's sort of it would be great for a garden party, or it would be even great for sort of like a beach wedding. But it's just, yeah, it's not formal enough, as Ursula is saying. And Janet is saying the fabric distracts from the details. Yes, because if this, for example, was like a wool crepe even, or like a matte silk, if it was a fabric like Princess Beatrice, that, you know, the dress would actually look quite regal, because it sort of has like details you get on royal robes and stuff. But it's just the two of them together. It's just doesn't quite work for occasion. But let's go through some of the. We've got Cherry Player, which I actually really liked. I only got this photo, I apologize, and you can see it rained on her. But I thought that was a really good occasion specific dress, because it's a really simple dress. It's a pastel color, which contrasts always really nicely with all the dark suits most men wear. But it's got this really beautiful roll collar. And what's quite special it's quite, I'm going to try to draw it. It's quite a deep roll collar. Of course, there's a tutorial for a roll collar on the membership. We've also got tutorials for this, and we've got tutorials for different sleeves where you can try out drop shoulders like that. And we have got roll collar tutorials as well. And I think this might be worth another tutorial because it's quite different. And Shalom is loving it. It's very Jackie Kennedy. Yes, it is like the best of sort of just, it frames her face really nice. The color's been chosen perfectly. But Jackie Kennedy quite often had the quite high roll necks. This is really nice. I'm probably going to fail to draw it because it's very clever. It's quite flat on the side, but then at the front it really stands out. So it's sort of quite an unusual collar. And I think at the back it probably has, the back is like this, and then it's probably got X's at the back. So it's a really clever but simple idea, and I think this might be like some sort of double cloth wool. So it's a really nice quality drape, just heavy enough that it sits nicely. It could be a silk wool mix as well. And then again, the sleeves are just slightly maybe straight, or sort of slightly going in, and then maybe having a little of a kick off the cuff. And then they got the band and at the base, which I always think is a really nice detail, because if you have a dress with just a seam, it always looks a bit unfinished. So what you get with like occasion dresses like that, you either have a matching belt in the same color, or you would probably have like a ribbon in the same color with a bow, or alternatively you can use a band in the same color, and that can be either a waistband, or it can actually be that if you have your dress like this, it can actually sort of go out, and then your skirt attaches to the waist as well. So it works really well. And Ursula said she would prefer it with a straight skirt. She was drowning in the skirt. I didn't actually mind it too much. I think that sort of when she was there, it looks a bit too long, but when she was walking, you could have probably had a slightly straighter skirt that worked really nicely as well. but it's sort of I think the designer, she quite often does these big skirts. So I also wonder whether she had it slightly shortened, because they quite often were quite long with stars. But I think for what you're going to see in the pew, it's going to work perfectly. And it would have looked beautiful with a straight skirt as well. So it'd be very Jackie Kennedy event. Yes, and Shalom is just saying, is that seam purposely uneven? It could, yes, she quite often, this is by Susanna London, she did quite a lot of dresses for the coronation. They are sometimes sort of dip in the back, which from the side when you're walking, it looks like uneven, but if you see on the website, they look quite beautiful. So I wonder whether it's something like that, because on here it doesn't look quite right, but maybe from frontal it looked better from the front as well, but I saw. So we see. Okay, let's have a look at some more. So I had one last thing. I've got tutorials, I think, both on YouTube and on membership on roll collars. And if you'd like to know what to draft it, do please let me know. Send me a message or comment, and we can draft a roll collar like that at some point, because I think that's quite stunning. Or have some fun with roll collars, because you can have lots of different options. I'm going to show one last, actually, you got let's have a look at one last British ex-Prime Minister, which was Liz Truss. And the reason this is a high street dress. So I actually thought, like, there's been lots of dresses we've seen which would have been thousands and thousands of pounds. This is like a mid-market, it's not a cheap dress, but it's like a dress it's like a J. Crew dress. So I actually thought that's sort of, quite frugal. But again, I think it's great for that reason, like, but you can actually get really good look. But what you see with the dresses which are chosen off a peg, and we're going to have a few more, is that often they don't fit perfectly. So here you can see we have a slight gape. If it would have been made for her, you probably would have slightly fitted it, put another dart in there, so it fits really tight. Because it's all these things which don't show off on the and you're in the shop, it probably looks fine, but if you walk, it's probably not that great. Yeah, and the color is very out there, but it's sort of it's a bit like the Emma Thompson dress. It's whether you either stand out or you go pastel. So Liz Truss decided to stand out. But what this dress is actually quite nice. Look, it's got some really clever the details are actually all very pretty. So even, if a dress might not, it's also, it must be like very scary if you're dressing for an occasion like that and you're photographed from all angles. You have to stand up straight and all these sort of things. But it's actually quite a nice detailed dress. So it's got a little not grown on, it's got a stand-up collar, which then becomes a grown-on collar. Here, I think it's grown on. Oh no, it's got a seam, I apologize. Which actually then goes to nothing. So it's got lots of really interesting, from a drafting perspective, this is actually a really pretty dress for picking details. What I really loved is the dart construction, because that is really clever. So it's got a seam coming from, I think, actually your armhole. So it cups you a bit like a sort of bra, and then it's got two darts. So it's really shaped nicely, and it would allow you to do lots of fitting. And then it's just got a basic sleeve with a little bit of gathers and a pleated skirt. So I just thought, and again, it's got the matching belt, which is always, I think that's quite occasion work there, that you have everything matching. But I actually liked this best, and I think I've got the angle slightly wrong, for the pattern cutting. And on the membership, if you watched the Balmain jacket we did a while ago, that's sort of similar pattern cutting, where you can really add all of shaping for different bust shapes, whether it's a bigger bust or a smaller bust, and you can sort of all adapt it, because you got like a double dart and you also got that seam going, so you can really do a really nice shaping. I think I had two more government ministers, because there. A lot of the royals, of course, wore their robes on top, so it was quite hard to see what they're wearing underneath. I'm gonna do two quick more government people, politicians. So this is the wife of Humza, who's the first minister of Scotland. But what I loved is that they've gone with Scottish theme, and they've got the kilt, the tartan, and then she sort of got. I would have loved to have seen it with out the cape, because this is quite a spectacular cape, which would be probably wool to match the plate, and would have been all woven by the same companies. Everything is perfectly coordinated. But I thought it was a really nice way of using tartan for a evening gown, because quite often I do full-on tartan, but this is like a really nice design version of a tartan. So that's just a quick one, and you can't see that much, so I'm not going to make any choices. I also had Rishi Sunak's wife, which I liked, but I can't find the photos because she had a very nice sleeve. But what we had was Suella Braverman. But this is, again, I think this must be bought off the peg, and it just doesn't fit her very well. And it's a real pity, because the sleeves are really pretty. How they zoom in. Can you see? The sleeves are actually really beautiful. So if our normal bodice is like this, this has the sleeves slightly moved in probably, because otherwise they would fall down. I'd love to know what you think of it, whether you agree that the sleeves are pretty, but the fit isn't very good. And I thought it was a really nice sleeve, and sort of quite clever, because it's got a pleat there. And on this one, the volume is only added in the sleeve head. So you can see it's a fitted sleeve. But then it's not even the whole sleeve head, the volume, it's just the top of it, sort of draped in. And then it's got this, again, really nice neckline, but then it's just, I found it really distracting how it didn't fit properly, because you can see it's quite a nice sort of, again, like, all the style lines are there. And you know what, again, it probably looked really nice in the shop. It doesn't photograph it well. And I also noticed that a lot of the people there, they've been sitting in the car for too long. Both Shalom and Jen are making exactly the same point. Look at the skirt. It's completely greased, and her sleeves. So she's probably been sitting in the car or whatever for ages waiting, and it just hasn't made the journey. So yeah. And can you imagine if you did that, and then you just arrived and you look completely disheveled, even though you probably had all steamed and stuff. And again, it's sort of there. These are all the sort of where you can see the people who sort of make occasion dresses all the time. They probably, the fabric they choose is more crease resistant, so it looks better. So let's move away from politicians and have a look at some royalty. Okay, I'm gonna choose which one I quite liked. I quite like this one, which, it's either Portugal or Spain. Do any if you remember? Oh yeah, also saying it's not enough ease, and there's not enough too much crease. And Jenna saying, what fabrics would you choose? So I think sometimes so hard. So I imagine this is a very soft wool crepe, and I actually just made something in a similar quality, and I thought that it would hang beautifully, it drapes beautifully, but you literally lay it down on the floor, or you put it on and it will start creasing. So often it depends on the weave. So a lot of the, like, Sherry Blair's dress, if you look on the website, it's like a double cloth. So it's a specific weave. So it's nearly like a scuba, but it's woven out of wool. But it's more crease resistant. So quite often you actually have to sort of try it out. I also think it's a little bit too thin, maybe, which is why it's creasing. because in that one you would have to stand still all the time. And like a silk wool mix would also look very nice, because you can see this is a similar fabric, but you can see it's a bit of creasing, but it looks pretty good. And it is Ursula says the Queen of Spain. I thought it looks quite Balenciaga. I thought, not the sculptural Balenciaga, but Balenciaga did sort of quite a few dresses where he used his where you can see the Spanish influence. So I thought this was a really nice combination. And you can see what this is sort of a perfect royal occasion fabric, because it's all color coordinated from the shoes to the hat. And she's got that straw which sort of breaks it up a bit, but which again actually gets reflected in her gloves and in her handbag. So it all works really well together. But this is like a perfect one because it has lots of really nice drafting details and it fits really nice. So it's got a simple bodice, so a bit like Princess Beatrice. So again, it's sort of deciding where you want to put the details. But then they've actually put in details down the center front by these cloth covered buttons, which is just in that, it's just interest and texture and these really beautiful embroideries. But if it was contrast colors, then it would be really over top. But it's not quite, this just blends in nicely. And then again, it's got a matching waistband or belt. So again, it's a little bit of detail, but it doesn't overwhelm. It's got a classic seam. So, it's to decide where you want to pick your choices. And then you've got this really nice peplum skirt. And then really simple sleeves. So it's really nicely balanced. There's enough detail, but it doesn't overwhelm each other. And I also think it does look like it is of occasion. It doesn't overtake, but it's really fitting. And then I really actually like this skirt because it's so long. Because I think if it had a mini skirt, it looked out of proportion. But this long skirt actually sort of brings it all together, makes it right for the occasion. So I think that worked really well. And again, it's like nothing is too tight for her or too loose. So it's a really nice proportion. And Shalom says we need more Charles James in the world. Yes, that wouldn't go amiss. I think with occasions like that, it is really about, it's not like party wear, but it is a really specific design brief, which is quite interesting when you then pick apart what works and why it doesn't work. Because what I found quite interesting, so this is a fitted jacket and then the skirt, and there are two more examples of which by contrast, I'm going to finish off with these, which by contrast didn't quite work as well. So we had the Monaco. Is he an archduke or is he a prince? You can see I'm not up. And she, of course, is a former Olympic athlete. Hold a second. Need to look something up. Oh. There you go. I'm just reading your, sorry, I just had a knock on the door, the post, but I'm just reading your comments. So Jen said, I didn't watch the coronation, but I'm enjoying this analysis. I only watched parts of it when I went online and looked at the clothes. And Jen is also a fan of the Queen of Spain, which I agree is really good. And then also saying peplum jackets work really well, and so wool and silk crepe, she's guessing. And I agree. So if you go back for 1 second, you can see this is like a wool. It's got a similar feel Venezuela Braverman, but it just doesn't crease. So sometimes such a variation, if you add a bit of silk or if you mix the two together, or a different type of wool, whether it's cashmere or merino wool, you can sort of really change the fabric. None of these fabrics are going to be cheap. They're very precious fabric, but it's a precious occasion. And then we're trying to guess. It's definitely Monaco, and she is, I thought it was something like Chalane. And is it Prince Rainier? So it's basically, oh, Albert of Monaco. Thank you very much, Ursula. I knew it was Monaco, but I forgot the name. But she used to be a Olympic athlete. She's from South Africa, if I got it right. And is it Charlize? So she, she's got the jacket. This one, I can sort of see all the details. It's got the royal sort of sash, which is really royal. The color actually looks really beautiful on her, because if you look at the hat, it really suits her. But there's something, she's got an amazing athletic figure, but this doesn't really, I always hate pink. It doesn't really, it sort of, it sort of distracts, and it sort of doesn't look together, like all proportions are slightly wrong. And actually the jacket, you could so imagine the top part of the jacket, and again it's creasing, can you see? So this actually, like, this looks really pretty, doesn't it? So if it had for example, a peplum skirt or just a straight, it would look really nice. But then I thought this whole skirt was just too thin. So this is probably a wool silk mix, but then the skirt looks like it's made out of her sash, and it just collapses. It doesn't keep its shape. So by contrast, the Queen of Spain, her skirt again is just straight, but it's probably lined in something. So it's either flat lined, which is English call it mounting, or actually interlined, or just has a separate lining. But that just gives it extra body. So for example, if you have a wool like that, and you flat line it with a crepe fabric, it gives it more body, and it stops it collapsing and clinging to yourself. And with Charlene's outfit, you could see that just doesn't quite work. And she is, as Ursula saying, she's normally really elegant. She has these sort of Grace Kelly vibes, but this just, the color is right, the details are right, but it just, again, maybe it's a fabric choices, the proportions. It's a bit too fitted here, but then it's too big, and it doesn't seem to have underbuilt enough. So it didn't quite work for me. And I'm glad I'm not the only one getting confused with all the royals out there. The last one I wanted to show you, I've got quite a few, but we've done half an hour already. So let's have a look. So this was, of course, the woman who crazed all the tabloids and all the websites, because it's Kate Perry, and she's wearing a custom-made Bien Westwood, I think. I'd love to hear your opinion, because I think, again, it's one of those where you can see the details are all there, but it for something which is custom made, it doesn't fit her very well. And again, Bien Westwood, she does some beautiful, you can see it's all got the Bien Westwood details. It's got the low, the Bien Westwood one, it's got a really typical Bien Westwood, which is like a sailor collar construction. And if you want to know why I love sailor collars so much, have a look at the website at the membership. I've done a whole series of tutorials on a tailored collar, and also how you can use your sailor collar to create lots of similar style. And Beth is saying this is too tight, the Westwood. I agree. But it's got all these details. It's got this beautiful flat Peter Pan-like collar, which is sort of a typical Westwood interpretation of the suit jacket, because it makes it so sexy. And then it's got this sort of drapey thing. Bien Westwood always does really well. It's got beautiful sleeves, actually, but it's just, for something which is custom made, you would expect it to fit really well. Oh, Janet is saying it looks like a cheaper version of what Priyanka Chopra wore to Harry's wedding. I will have to look it up later. Yeah, it just does, you know, it looks like something you would pick up somewhere, isn't it? Like if she would have said it's vintage Westwood, you know, you think, oh yeah, it doesn't fit her well and stuff, but you know, for something you just custom made, you can see again, it's beautiful fabric. It's got all these really beautiful Westwood details, which make for a really feminine but interesting tailored style. But it just doesn't work. And Shalom is saying she loves the color, but she agrees that everything pulls in the wrong places. Yeah, I haven't even started on the skirt. The skirt is just weird. But the back, Westwood often does really clever stuff in the back. So, but I haven't seen a single back photo. I couldn't find one when I was glancing through, because it looks like there's some sort of drape going on, but it's just like it looks like it's really. You can see her thigh outline, you know, and her leg outline. So it's far too tight. But it's just a bit disappointing because look at all these nice details, because what Van has is the fitting here, which Vivienne Westwood always does, and then it's got this beautiful, which I love as a detail, upturned waist seam, which becomes a buttonhole. So it's actually one of your buttonholes, and then it's just got two more buttons up here. But you can see how the buttons are straining, and they're not holding up at all. And then it also got the beautiful pocket, Westwood always does, which is like a sort of fold over drape pocket, which we should actually do on the membership as well. Because I had to learn all my degree, so I'm going to inflict it all on you how to do all these lovely Westwood styles. So you can see all the details are there. It's actually a really nice style, but it's just not quite right. Yeah, and Ursula is saying, what's going on is the cleavage. It looks like it's a size too small. And I think what Vivienne Westwood does, she does actually sexy really well, where you have like a really nice cleavage. But here it just looks, it becomes loop-sided. It actually looks like my drawing. It looks a bit sort of, it actually becomes quite unflattering because it's too tight. If it was a right fit around, you can see how it's straining here. Actually, it looked really flattering. This is a really flattering jacket type. This Westwood has done lots of variation. It normally looks stunning, so it's a bit weird. Maybe it was like a last minute, because I don't know when the invites went out. They went out quite late, so maybe that was it. So, but yes, it was quite a surprise. So these were some of my choices. I had a lot more bad ones and good ones, but we might have to do the second one. But what is quite interesting, even, you know, if you don't like something, you can pick out the drafting details you like and then make something you want. And actually, I'm going to choose with some Finnish members of the public. I didn't know who were there, but look at that dress. So that's like where you can just see that's a beautiful drafting detail. And it becomes a cape at the back, I think. I mean, it's got a really beautiful bias cut spiral seam. So you can pick out the bits you like and then make it your own, of course. And lots of comments on the Kate Perry. And Jen is saying it looks like it's not made for her. That's what I assume, that it was like a last minute job. But according to the internet, it's actually made to measure to her. But you can see, oh, look, you can actually see there's some sort of bustle at the back. But it's, again, you know, this all looks like a bit like the Charlene of Monaco, where it's just, there's not enough under construction going on. So it's not great. So these were my picks from the coronation, a real mixed bag, and with some of them you have to be a bit critical, but it's actually what's really interesting, even with the Kate Perry, these are sort of all the fitting issues we face quite often, and of course that's the great thing. If you have your own blog, you don't have to worry about it to a certain degree, because it will fit you perfectly, and then you can just put on the design choices you want. And of course, looking at stuff like that, it's really interesting to learn what works, which angles work well on which body, which ones is too heavy, out of balance, how can I construct or choose my fabrics properly so I avoid doing it. So I feel a bit mean criticizing it, but it's more about using it as a chance to actually learn ourselves how to avoid it, because I'm sure by then, you know, you try your best. Good. Oh, and we have this last, before I finish off, we got a suggestion from Miss Jen that there's some interesting look at the BAFTAs. I haven't even looked at them. I will have a look, because I looked at the Met a bit, because a lot of it is so, the Met Gala is so spectacular. I think it sort of doesn't become interesting from a pattern cutting perspective, because most of us want to make clothes for ourselves to wear, and very few of us go to the Met Gala. And Met say we can criticize, they can't hear us, but still, I know. I try to do sort of as constructive criticism. So we're not being mean. We're actually thinking, you know, what went wrong? Why did it happen? But anyway, I find it often we actually learn more, because there's some beautiful styles which are perfectly executed. But then if you see what's gone wrong, you can really see, like, oh yeah, the fabric choice, you know, that doesn't quite work that much. It works well. And Shalom is saying critical eyes, not judgmental. Exactly. That's the right perspective. You're right. Anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for joining me and watching and exploring these coronation looks. And if you'd like to join me on membership and learn to draft a lot of these styles, then please do so. And you can use a special offer, which is in the description, which is to get all your block courses included if you join for a year. And that's for a week only. And the theme for the next weeks is dresses. So lots of the members have sent me beautiful dress ideas, and we're going to look at lots of different, both contemporary and vintage dresses, statement and day dresses. So it's lots of really fantastic ideas people have shared with me. So I'm really looking forward to diving into all of these with you. And thank you so much for joining me. Lovely to see you, Jan and Shalom and Beth and Ursula as well. And thank you for watching. And if you'd like to give me a thumbs up, because that always, of course, helps with YouTube. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everybody.